what's up YouTube? Welcome to a very sad video today as I discuss why everyone is quitting PoE even after all the band-aid fixes and patches that GGG keeps implementing. So what exactly is going on? So I found that this thing was pretty funny. The only drop rate that was buffed this league is the rate of players dropping out of the league. And we will look at player retention in a little bit, and it is an absolutely depressing number. And this person is probably one of the biggest proponents of GGG in terms of just grinding it out, and that people who whine are complaining too much. And Alkaiser pretty much said, don't ever post on this, but done with PoE this league is not very fun compared to recent leagues. Work harder for less. And this is pretty much, you run harvest, you get no life force, you can't really craft any gear. You kill the arch nemesis mods, which are incredibly hard to fight sometimes, especially in SSF hardcore, and you get absolutely nothing out of it. And you do a map, you get 6 alteration orbs, maybe 1 alk or something like that, and it is just an awful feeling to have, because you are literally playing a game that is not really rewarding you for anything that you're doing. And Path of Map, someone who has created almost all of the mirror items in the past, and let's go watch what happens when Alkaiser was doing the...
And I'll probably not stream for like a week.
So he's pretty much fighting an arch nemesis mod. And he's trying to kill it,
Right, I can kite him.
Look at this, he just keeps fighting it, But this is the amazing gameplay vision. And then look what drops.
He's gone into a frenzy!
Just keeps going and going and going.
Bullshit.
So this is the interactive gameplay experience that Arch Nemesis brings. And I think he's about to kill it now.
Shit, he almost bit me. That might have one-shot me, I have no idea.
And we'll watch for it.
Oh, I killed him. What did I get?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
I like running a map, getting a jeweler's orb and like 2 alterations and a transmutation, find a harvest, and get 6 life force.
So that is pretty much like a TLDR of why he's quitting. He's pretty much not having fun with the game, doesn't like state of melee, and he doesn't find mapping very rewarding. Now, Path of Map, someone who makes all of the mirror items, is saying he's quitting because endgame crafting is not the same, loot is not the same either, and it's pretty much their vision is killing the game right now. And let's go check out the player retention numbers. So right here, we can see the player retention numbers, and boy, are they pretty depressing. This is the worst of any league by far in PoE history. So this is a retention number that is based off the day 5 player retention of the peak. And as we all know, the peak of players was around 150,000, I think, supposedly on Steam. Now, all of the numbers are based off of Steam, and for people who are wondering, is Steam really a good metric? Well, Steam is a pretty good metric because I think in recent interviews, Chris said that over 60% of the people were playing on a Steam client compared to the standalone client. And this is the number right now. And this is pretty much peak time for PoE in terms of the number of players because of the time zone and when I'm actually recording this video. So it's pretty much prime time in EU and prime time in North America for the East Coast. So as we can see here, Expedition was the previous worst, and Expedition is literally the league where they started doubling down on their vision, where they wanted to slow the game down. They felt the game was getting too fast. They nerfed fracture maps, they nerfed pretty much mana cost, they nerfed the flasks, but the flask did end up being a pretty good change in the end. And in Expedition, they decided to announce all of these nerfs. They didn't try to hide it, and it led to the player base dwindling down super fast. And then Chris went on his apology tour where he had to pretty much say to everyone that he was sorry and that he was going to communicate more in the future before he did a bunch of changes, and we all know how that went. Now, after Expedition, you could see that the community kind of lost trust in PoE. It's not like the end game was any faster in PoE, but you can see here, after Expedition, every single lead had horrific retention compared to the past. In the leagues before, you have Betrayal, where 86% of the players were still playing 5 days into the league. Even Synthesis, which was a complete nightmare at launch, was at 70%. Legion, 77%. Blight, which had to deal with WoW Classic, was at 75%. Metamorph, which was an amazing expansion league, was at 83.6%. Delirium was overtuned at the start. but still had massive improvements to endgame, 71.5. Harvest, really bad at the start before they fixed it, but it was still at 72%. Heist, which people hated, was at 78%. Ritual, which is known to be one of the best leagues of all time, was at 78%. And Ultimatum was actually somehow, even though people, well, there's a reason why people loved it, and it's at 81%. Now, Expedition was at 60%, Scourge at 62%, Arch Nemesis at 61%, and Sentinel at 65.6%. And you can see here there is a huge downward trend in terms of what has happened to PoE, and part of that is the complete loss in trust that the community has for GGG, and how every single league has pretty much repeated the same cycle, where the first week is pretty much a beta test period where we as the players are pretty much testing out the game for GGG, and it seems like players are finally sick of it. As we can see here, 54.9% player retention, and yeah, that's just completely awful. So you might be wondering, with these terrible player numbers, that means that GGG is responding in full force, trying to change the game for the better. And if you look at it on the paper level or on the ground level, it does seem like they did do that. So this is the latest patch notes, or the balance manifesto, or whatever you want to call it, known as improvements to item drops. So they say we will deploy a patch soon that significantly improves item drops throughout PoE. We have massively, now note this word massively, it is used all the time now. It is the new meme word for GGG, massively and anchor. Now we'll talk about why anchor a little bit later. We have massively increased the rarity bonus for items dropped by monsters with multiple Arch Nemesis mods. Notice how this doesn't have quant, but GGG did say that rarity did in fact increase the amount of items, or what type of items and currency that a mob can drop. We have massively increased the rarity of items dropped by map bosses, so now they drop a lot more unique, so that's pretty good. We have globally increased the drop rate of unique by 33%. That's pretty crazy, right? 33%. We have globally increased the base drop rate of currency items by 25%. Wow. Reduced the cost of many harvest crafts, with many becoming twice as cheap. That sounds pretty good. We have significantly improved the amount of rewards from the Lake of Kalandra. So the lake is going to be super useful to do. Effectiveness of tainted currency items. Wow. This sounds amazing. You think the game is playable now? Absolutely not. Not even close. And we'll go over why. And it is not even close. So why does this not fix loot? So as you may know, GGG wrote that they pretty much nerfed the drop rate or the massive bonuses to quant and rarity for all past league mechanics. Now this impacts the game because most of the loot from juice maps are from past league mechanics. In the past, people were rolling Beyond on the map. They were putting Abyss on the map. They were putting Harbinger on the map. They were putting Breach on the map and Legion. So this is all important for juicing. Now, Empyrean has had some data, and they do think that they've probably nerfed the loot from the previous league mechanics by roughly 90%. So what does this mean? So when you nerf something by 90% and then you promise a 30% or 25% buff, it sounds good on paper, but we're still at 13% of our original power. This is also something known as like some cognitive thing called anchoring, where you pretty much set the bar super low with this 90% nerf, and then you try to negotiate from there and buff it by 30%. Well, the player base for PoE is generally pretty smart. We have a lot of computer programmers here, some mathematicians, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out what GGG is doing, and they are pretty much playing us for a bunch of fools by using this trick on us and trying to manipulate us into thinking that the loot is buffed. Now, you don't even need to be a mathematician to figure out when you go run a map with your Magic Find gear in Standard with Legacy gear that something is still not working. So if you look at this, this is from the Magic Find Academy, where people have pretty much full mirrored gear on Standard, running Legacy quant with 200% quant and like 600% rarity. These are loot from a fully juiced map with Legacy Magic Find. So you can see here 260% quant on the map, 229% rarity, 43% pack size, right? And this is the amount of loot that drops. He says he is barely even breaking even, and he might even be operating at a money loss. So this is the amount of loot that's dropping from a fully juiced map after these improvements to loot that they posted. So it is pretty much, frankly, pathetic what is going on. The loot is still not fixed, and if group magic finding is not making money, if people in Standard with Legacy quant gear is not making money, then how are you, as a solo player who's just trying to juice some maps, put some scarabs on a map, going to be making money in the long run, right? So the only way that's possible is if the economy adjusts so that the scarabs pretty much become worthless, and that is pretty much what is going to be happening soon. Now, next up, you might be wondering, they probably fixed harvest, right? With the harvest changes, some of the crafts cost a lot less. Well, this is the part of the area where I might give GGG some props. However, crafting for the endgame items is still completely screwed until they bring back some of the crafts like Reforge Key Prefix and Suffix and Reforge X more likely, like Reforge Attack more likely. I'm not really sure why that stuff is not on the harvest crafts and why they removed it. Because right now, if you fill up your suffixes or prefixes, you are completely screwed. And if you want to see a demonstration, this is a weapon I have right here. So if you ever do Reforge suffixes, or you do prefixes cannot be changed, and then do Reforge Speed in order, or Reforge Crit in order to try to get a crit mod, if you ever fill up the suffixes of the item, you will never ever be able to remove it deterministically, and you have a huge chance of breaking your item. What this means is that crafting endgame items is now pretty much an RNG fest, where you have a limited number of attempts before you have to hit an annul on your item. That will completely ruin it. So even though these harvest changes seem pretty good on paper, and in all honesty, the crafts probably still cost way too much. They didn't really nerf some of the crafts, and the ones that they did nerf shows a complete lack of understanding in actually testing out the numbers. So right now you can see here, Fracture 4 mods is roughly 10,000 instead of 50,000. Synthesized item is 50,000. Or 5,000 instead of 50,000. Reforged Influence is now 5,000 instead of 50,000. So all this shows me is you didn't even look at the numbers really closely. If you actually can nerf these by over 90% in some cases and think that is perfectly fine, when you actually do nerfs where you're nerfing stuff by a factor of 90%, all it tells the player base is you are not testing it out and you're pretty much delegating it out to some random intern and not really trying to double check the work and seeing whether these changes you make are actually going to be balanced for the life force that you get from Harvest. So overall, at this point, GGG has pretty much trying to give us bandages when our arms are chopped off, our legs are chopped off, and we're pretty much bleeding out. So we should be sent to the hospital and getting our game fixed, but instead they're just giving us some little band-aids and maybe some water. So the question is, why die on a hill to justify a nonsensical nerf? GGG is obviously not dumb. They obviously know what they're doing with the game in terms of how the game mechanics actually work. I refuse to believe that the people who designed the game don't know how quant drop works. But the fact of the matter remains is if you make group magic find not profitable, then solo players will never be able to justify running juice maps. Pretty much turns the game into an expedition or heist simulator. And GGG keeps playing us for fools with these buffs, as the core issue of nerfing loot from previous league mechanics by roughly 90% is not addressed. Maybe they don't know that most of the loot you get from juice maps is pretty much all from previous league mechanics. So when you nerf something by 90%, it's going to be a big factor. And it's not even just juice maps, just regular maps. You have old league mechanics that you can put on the map with the Atlas passive tree. So we're pretty much getting an insane amount of lower loot. Now, crafting endgame items has been relegated to the Stone Age. If you ever want to see a 12-link weapon again, that's probably never going to happen. You're never going to see a lot of items that you used to see. Mirror services will be pretty bad in general. And this is pretty much the new way of crafting your items. Spamming an essence on a fractured item, and that's pretty much going to be it. So it really begs the question of what they want us to do in terms of crafting. Because right now it seems like it's just a huge RNG slot machine where you either spam essences and spam fossils and try to pray with Ashling or something like that. And it's just a horrible feeling. Now, Neversink, the person who makes the filter, does bring up some nice points. And the big culprit here is the massive quantity bonus from League rewards was the absolute best way of farming and magic finding in maps. And it's not even just magic finding, it's pretty much just the game in general. Instead, they try implementing a mechanic that rewards you for fighting difficult encounters. So they're pretty much trying to make it so the more Arch Nemesis mods you fight, the more rewarding the mob's loot is. But it turns out that this is not really working out so hot. Pretty much people are just finding like 20 and 30 flasks on the ground or some random useless stuff like maybe some armor scraps and whetstones. And maybe they truly messed up and they didn't really think about how important the past league mechanic rewards were. But at this point, it's time to just revert the changes, right? And this is something else he said. Players generally can feel a problem very well, but lack experience, less bird-eye perspective to solve it. Developers can move into the right direction, but lack the insight and micro perspective. This leads to collateral damage. Now, this is usually solved, as he says, through communication, and it seems like GGG has shut us off from communication and are pretty much doubling or tripling down on a vision when everyone is pretty much quitting the game. And if you think I am over-exaggerating here, let's go on YouTube real fast and look at PoE, and we will see here how many people are actually quitting the game. In terms of content creators, it is really bad. I'm done with Path of Exile. Gazzy was all hell is broken loose for Path of Exile. Asmongold is why people are quitting Path of Exile. Big Ducks is nothing is actually being fixed, and I think I'm done with Path of Exile. This guy was one of the most upbeat players in PoE or content creators I've ever seen. GGG, please. This one, new patches misses the point again. Subtract him, another really upbeat person. This update misses the point. Tone deaf update. Why the PoE community is very upset. Can rarity buff save PoE? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. And I don't know about this guy. The complicity of content creators. Okay, but maybe he's going on in the other direction. But GGG went too far in 3.19. So basically, you can see everyone is upset about the changes. So what we can do is vote with our wallet, refund the supporter packs or something like that. And we'll see how it goes. I do think that GGG will probably walk back some of the nerfs because so many people are complaining about it, but they didn't really do it the first 2 times, but maybe third time's the charm, right? But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more mirrors, exalts, and mage bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye!